Welcome everybody, and thanks for coming today. For those of you that have not been to the Orassy, this centre has been established from 2008 initially, and the concept of the centre was one of a multi-function space. That means a space that we come to in order to experience different aspects of services and ways of exploring what is available for our own inner development, and that includes health and understanding life on multiple levels. I have had experiences throughout this life where self-development and healing and therapy and science and art have been an integral part of the way in which I have learned and understood how to interface with life. And the vision that came to me, and actually the word Orassy means vision, was to establish a space where these different aspects, these different faculties could be experienced in one place. It was quite a big, tall order initially, because it's something that's not common. If you go to a clinic, obviously it's not a research place, or generally you don't find it to be the space. If you go to an art centre, you don't have necessarily self-development or therapy going on, or anything to do with research. If you go to a place of self-development, you don't normally have any research going on or any therapy. It's something that's unusual. So the vision came to me for that many years ago, but as with all of us, we have our limitations. Probably the first one would be the financial one, and secondly, finding people who can share the vision, because it's not easy to do something like that on your own. So the process took a while, and to be honest with you, I started with that particular journey from as far back as 2001. And every single time I tried to find the property, which was in the West End, something would happen and it would be taken away. I'd lose the opportunity or whatever of purchasing it. And then when I gave up and I said, not going to do this anymore, I've had enough, it's obvious the universe does not want me to establish something like this. This place came up. It was under offer already to somebody else, and I came and had a look at it, and there were walls everywhere, and it was partitioned in a very unusual way. The reason was the guy was obviously trying to get the maximum rent he could from it. So all this space was blocked off, and there was a column here, and it was just a very unusual type of layout. So when people come here and they see it, a lot of people think it was designed like this already, and I just kind of popped in and, you know, maybe threw some color paint on it, and there I have a center. But actually this had to be stripped completely and reconstructed. And took a whole year. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because I knew that the energy of the space potentially was very particular. And interestingly enough, as a result of the new European Union laws, I had to make it energy efficient. So in doing that, I studied, because throughout high school and the first part of my studies at a polytechnic, I was training to become basically an architect, because I was studying engineering mechanics, material science, and then architectural design. And in doing that, new materials had been created, which were both thermal, acoustic, and reduced negative electromagnetic frequencies. So I've lined all the walls of this entire space with all of that, including the floor. So it's basically an insulated space. And invariably, when people come in, they feel a difference between being on the street and being in here. They don't necessarily know why. Some people comment that it's calm, it's peaceful. Others just say there's something very uplifting or whatever. But I know for a fact, because I've used a meter to check it as well, that the EMFs are reduced enormously here. As you walk, by the way, from here, every 100 meters to Canary Wharf, the meter increases in terms of the amount of permissible, what's the word, inducement of electromagnetic frequencies. So by the time you get there, it's about 500% more than you should have. So the people who actually work there are under a lot of stress on a daily basis without having to have anything to do with human inducement, because of the amount of concrete, metal, glass, and electricity. That alone, plus radio waves. So it's a very interesting situation that the price we pay to have modern buildings and structures like those in Canary Wharf So I didn't want to buy anything there. I actually looked there, had an opportunity to see a property in that area, and noticed that if I set something up there, it would be very, very superficial and temporal in terms of its capacity to actually heal, because it's under so much stress. We're talking about electromagnetic stress. And also, unfortunately, that particular area had a lot of chemical waste in it in the past as well, because this whole area, there were docks, so they loaded and unloaded and whatever. So if you look at the entire area of where we are, the financial capital is focused on trying to create an overall shift in the way in which the planet is controlled and the direction it's going in, but it's sitting on a very negative inducement space. And this is having a negative effect on those who are working there. So being here, what we looked at trying to do was set up a space that was close enough, but just outside of that perimeter. And then, obviously, have a space to which people could come to find some kind of harmony and balance to all of this, what I see as the condition of modern society. Because anywhere you go on the planet today, there are problems living in cities. We'll talk about the details of that a little later when we get to the quantum feng shui. Starting back to the Orassy, or going back to the Orassy, the concept of the multifunction center. Why a multifunction center? What's the purpose of that? Why not just leave things the way they are? If I want to get involved in arts, I go and either watch a theatre or listen to music and go to a concert hall, etc. If I'm interested in science, I'll go to some institute that has that type of direction, etc. Or if I'm interested in health, stroke medicine, then I do what we do normally in the West. Everything is nicely compartmentalized, separated and compartmentalized. Listening to that, the concept of a multifunction center is that it reflects our multifunction nature. After all of those different places are set up and run by human beings. They are different facets of the same individual. It's just that when we go through the schooling process, those who are our mentors look at how well we fit into the agenda, which is known as the curriculum. And consequently, they then decide where your talents are. And as educators, those who extract from you, they look at how well you fit into either science or maths or arts or humanities, etc. And then they basically go through the indoctrination process. Because when we're all born on a certain level, we have equal opportunities to develop all our faculties. In that respect, every single human is equal. Now, genetically, we have inherited specific information from father and mother and the bloodline. Then, during the course of being in your mother, there's a lot of information input there, so that's the internal environmental input. Then the time you pop out, where you pop out, what the environment is like, the country you're born in, whether the parents are arguing, whether it's a loving, supportive environment, that also imprints. And then from 0 until the age of 2, that's your foundation imprinting. Thereafter, when you go out, you're old enough to actually stand and start exploring, and you go into the process of identification. So you go from chair, table, flower to my chair, my table, my flower. So it is about establishing territoriality, because you want to set up a clarity between internal boundaries and external boundaries. This is basically what's going on in the psychological and in the psycho-emotional and the psycho-mental levels. Because physiologically, the child, when it's born, is picking up information constantly. And the fingers are very powerful receptors, and so are the toes. That's why they stick their feet in their mouth, because like they're getting info. You know what's going on there. It's completing the circuit. Everything starts in here. You're completing energetic circuitry to add to your conscious mind what you're picking up from the external environment. So what you're smelling, what you're tasting, what you're hearing, what you sense through touch, And of course, what you see with babies, seeing is the worst of their senses. How does a baby know its mother? Smell. Precisely. And that is the most ancient of the senses. That's why animals have such a high sense of smell. And the ones that, it's usually the predator has a very good sense of smell, and the one that's being predated on has a very good sense of hearing, so that it can sense in case someone's attacking it, so it can run away to stay alive. So survival is at the foundation of all of this. As we develop ourselves, firstly, as a result of the senses, what they pick up from the external environment goes directly into your instinct. That is precognitive, has nothing to do with any imprinting whatsoever. It's quite simply genetically inherited. And it's directly connected with your survival instinct. Because if you don't survive, you're not here long enough to evolve. So if you're gone, you're gone. It's like better luck next time. So we want to stay here X amount of time so that we have an opportunity to evolve, not just grow. One of the things that I feel is a great pity of modern times, and it began with Western society in Europe, and they've managed to influence all other societies around the world, including Asia, Africa, and South America, where all these peoples still have a very strong wisdom tradition linked through what we call animism to earth and all other levels of existence. When you separate yourself from all of that and you go into the intellect, and everything unfortunately becomes biased and one-sided, you're missing out on all the rest of you. I'm sure nobody needs to define scientifically or otherwise the fact that we have thoughts. We have emotions. There are sensations. There is something you could call an intuition, an inner feeling. You've all sensed your instinct, your gut feeling. And from time to time, there's a part of us where we are observing from a non-critical, non-judgmental space. In some wisdom traditions, we call this the higher self. These five are our main faculties. If we are living life with the domination or the dictation of one particular faculty over the others, I think we don't need to look too far and realize there's an imbalance there. So even if we are only predominantly mental or emotional, what happened to our intuition? What happened to our body knowing? What happened to our non-critical, non-judgmental self? Do we learn this or learn about it in school? No, because schools are not designed. I have an education degree. I'm a science, mathematics, and English teacher, apart from the research side. We are socializing agents. Our job is to make sure you fit into what society wants you to become, according to what the agenda says you can and can't do, because we've put you through this process. We throw all this stuff at you. Okay, let's see how well you do at numbers. Let's see what you can do with words. Let's see what you can do with paints and colors. Yes, and then we see how we fit into it all. And accordingly, oh, little Johnny's very good at this, but he's not good at that. And little Mary's very good at this, but she's not good at that. It's all about how we farm people into boxes by compartmentalizing. By doing that, we separate. By separating, we keep people in a state of disparity, not wholeness. And when you don't have wholeness, fundamentally, you cannot have health. So that brings us to the next definition. I travel a lot to different countries, and the one country I go to regularly is Russia. And it's a very interesting place because whereas in Europe, as a result of 2 world wars, in the past we had the 2 major powers that controlled all of life. It was a monarchy and a representation of a religion. Here it's the church. In Russia they had the same thing. They had a monarchy and they had the church, the Orthodox Church. In Europe, the monarchies dissolved and they were replaced by some kind of political institution. And it ranges from full-on capitalism here to socialism in Scandinavia, which is socialist democracy. In Russia, however, and the church remained. So the church is still here. In Russia, however, before even the end of the First World War, they had a revolution. I'm sure everyone's heard about this. It was known as the Bolshevik Revolution. It just simply means the masses. Bolshoi means big. So there was the movement of the masses where they got fed up with being controlled. It was a feudal system. So the Tsarist system was an empire. And so that was taken over by this concept, this Lenin Marxism, this socially oriented infrastructure. And it, however, is not a very democratic one, because you don't get to decide which other party might be able to come in, because it's one party. It's called the Politburo. The only thing that changes are the members. So the reps, basically, the representatives. But the Orthodox Church was abolished as a result of their concept, and it was taken over by the Academy of Sciences, which means science was given the position of God. And to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but I don't think that happened anywhere else on the planet, at least not at that time. And that's quite interesting and unique. The Russians turned around and said, like Mao Zedong later, religion is poison, because look what damage it's done to us. However, spirituality is very interesting. So we shall study every single aspect of it, but through science. We want it to be able to be verified and tangible and practical and real, because there was a pragmatism that came in. As a result of this, they studied every single aspect of what we call now the paranormal and the metaphysical. From the impact of killing a mother rabbit or a baby rabbit on the mother rabbit, to how to communicate with sailors in a submarine, to whatever. And that's what led to them sending the first man out into space, the cosmonauts and the Sputnik and the rest of it. Because they have a very deep understanding, natural understanding, and interest in the interconnectivity between the physical, the metaphysical, and what could be called, because the word is there, spirit. Consequently, the one man I go to visit regularly holds a conference every year, and it's called Science, Information, and Spirit, Dr. Konstantin Korotkov. He's a professor of physics at 3 institutes. In an atheistic country, they are researching what is the meaning of spirit. Not from a religious point of view, not from a political point of view, and not from a personal agenda point of view, just from the point of view of what does spirit mean. I found that very interesting, because by and large, to be a scientist, you have to be very, very unbiased and say that 1,000 experiments can prove me right, it only takes one to prove me wrong. Not many people can do that, and certainly not many clerics, and certainly not many religious leaders, because they're very dogmatic about their beliefs. Now, having said that, old order scientists, especially what we call the mechanistic scientists, that means we go back literally to about 300 years ago, Descartes, René Descartes, and I think, therefore I am, and Isaac Newton and the mechanistic levels of the world, are still very attached to their Bible. Their Bible is based on the 2 laws of thermodynamics, which means energy can neither be created nor destroyed, and that's the foundations of everything. It just transforms into another, it alters into another form. And secondly, everything expands constantly into chaos. Now, I was in Greece 3 weeks ago with a gold medalist who just won a gold medal, Nobel laureate, for his work in taking the information of paracetamol, putting it into a computer, sending it to someone in the other part of the world, downloading that onto a disk, putting a glass of water onto the disk, and then the water had been imprinted with the information coding of the paracetamol. And then they tested it with a spectrometer and found that it was exactly the same, only the physical paracetamol wasn't in it. Interesting, yeah? So all these unusual, very hard to explain according to mechanistic science phenomena are now being shown through what we call quantum physics, but not quantum mechanics. Let's not confuse the two, because Niels Bohr, with his shell theory, was still mechanistic. That's why it's called quantum mechanics. We had Newtonian mechanics, which is about F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration, the three laws. An object will stay at rest or continue moving until acted on by an external force. The key here is that we began to realize that the unusual nature of life is because life exists beyond what our senses tell us are the limits of life. And that is when people turn around and say, but that's God, isn't it? That is spirit. Or let's just say, as the Russians do, it's beyond the physical, therefore metaphysical. So, when I talk about health, it is not on a mechanistic basis, because you are not a machine. And until very recently, in fact, I believe still in this country, when they approach the concept of medicine, the body is still being looked at as a complex of systems, as if it were a machine. And clearly we're not. Simply that. There is a part of us that could be described that way. But then, when other angles and perspectives are taken, we begin to realize we're much more than that. To choose to see the body as a composite of systems is like saying, I've got all of the parts and I put them together and there's the whole. But you see, the new whole is much more than the sum of the parts. And it is constantly changing. And that is the one thing humans don't like. They're very attached to their concept of what life is, according to their perception, because it makes them feel safe. And you want to feel safe because you don't want to be putting energy into survival instinct, where I've got to be sitting and thinking about what's threatening me. Loss of job, loss of money, loss of food, loss of being loved, loss of home. So a lot of energy gets wasted in worrying about what you might lose, rather than going into understanding what you are as opposed to who you are. Where I'm coming from is that I propose that the reason for all of this is not that we're born with that. That's something we've been programmed to believe. In other words, focus more as a result of the compartmentalization, the separation, focus more on personality and character rather than the essence that you are. And that's where I'm coming from. Orassy means vision, and it's having the vision to see beyond what is in the here now, the form that you are. After all, when you were just born, you were this big, and then 2 years later, you were this big. And then 5 years later, you are this big. So as the years pass, you grow to your full capacity, and then the cells grow old. In other words, in their process of replicating, the copies get a little bit worn. You're constantly changing. So why are we trying to hang on to not changing? We're constantly fighting natural law. And everything I'm talking about and everything I'm presenting right now is based on natural law. That's nothing to do with humans. That's nothing to do with my choice, your choice, any individual's choice. That's the way planet Earth has been designed, and that is the way of the cosmos, because the planet, according to all wisdom traditions, is a direct mirror image of the cosmos. And then, furthermore, according to all wisdom traditions, and now today very much supported by quantum physics, that you are as vast in the journey going inward as space is in the journey going outward. That means you are a microcosm. So if we focus on personality and character, can you see what we're missing out on? This is why it's so popular to just have psychology and psychiatry, because it stops at a certain point. We just deal with what's going on between your head and your heart, and not the rest. Psychology is good and helpful in trying to find cause to effect. But once you do, my sister is a leading psychologist in the world and an international leading conflict resolution expert. And she's also a Supreme Court barrister, so she works with law and what laws do and how they should work. And she works with Aboriginals directly, because that's the people that because I grew up in Australia. And I had a strong wisdom tradition input from these people who have no attachment to anything physical whatsoever, because they don't see a separation. When white man came in, separation immediately. And it broke down their consciousness and their capacity to sustain the harmony and balance they had on that continent. And so it separated them from natural law. And their soul began to diminish. And then they introduced alcohol, and it became worse and worse and worse. But this is what happens if we allow ourselves to get separated. So the concept of health and where I'm coming from, and getting back to what my sister had a discussion with her only earlier this year, she said, yes, she's 10 years older than me, and she said, psychology at its best will help you to find cause to effect, but we have no mechanism to assist you in what to do about it. It stops there. So how do we change that set of programs of cause to effect? So I have been doing many practices throughout this life, beginning with esoteric Christian practices, then Taoist practices, and then Zen Buddhist, and then Tibetan Tantric practices. All of them are aimed at transforming the limited self into the unlimited self, because you are that, but you don't know it. So to tell you that verbally, it's all nice and it sounds good and it makes you feel good, but it doesn't mean it's just going to happen, because mentally you've got that information, unfortunately. Because of the fact that in the education process, what it has done is it's reinforced the one part of the brain which over millennia, many millennia, has evolved into believing, scientifically proven, the left brain sees itself as separate from the rest of the brain. It sees itself as having a task. It's like a guard that sits up on a tower, and it's got a spotlight in one hand and a gun in the other one. And it says, stop, who goes there? And if you're American, shoot first, ask questions later. So, if anything comes in that might disrupt the so-called set of parameters that makes up your belief system, it questions it. And if it doesn't like it, out. So, keep what you like, get rid of what you don't like. That's what it's been designed to do over your entire life, but not just yours. It is genetically imprinted in humans for that to happen. Consequently, in the process of trying to understand what is coming in, it's very, very limited, because it's extremely selective based on what you have been imprinted to believe is acceptable and believe will be good for you. Because your parents, your child goes out and it's exploring, does what it does. It's a pure expression of chaos. What is a child? Let it run, no, it just, nah. And you're just like, no, stop, stop, stop. And the child's hearing, stop, stop, what, and then you, naughty, bangs. Imprinting all the way. Therefore, in its natural response to seeing or smelling or sensing something, it wants to engage with it, you set the parameters already from the word go. Nobody's going to let a child walk around a house and put crayon and colors all over the walls and pull things down, because this is what dynamic is in. It's its natural dynamic response. You could call it play. Play is when a part of it is interacting and trying to creatively respond. But the normal response is just literally the chaos force or the expansion dynamic. So when you talk about in Tao, for example, that's a yang energy. Because inside the child is constantly, because it is young, it is a bundle of energy. That little bundle expands and grows into a full-grown adult. And if everything is connected, aligned, and fully functional, that means you're functioning on all 12 cylinders, then you extend and you have an aura or an energy field, a biomagnetic field. And we can measure the brain's biomagnetic field and the heart's, which apparently, well, I've heard different versions, but it's at least 100 times more powerful than the brain's magnetic field, biomagnetic field. But biomagnetism is measurable and it is exuded from the human body. There are many devices, there are many ways of looking at and understanding that we are not A, a machine, B, a walking, talking robot, or C, an animal driven by survival. We're much more complex than that. But because society over many millennia, particularly in this part of the world, has decided this is what humans are, this is how they should behave, and this is what we want them to become, so that we can keep everything nicely controlled and in order. Yet there are many parts of the world where you go to and they have a very different perception of humans, different perception of nature, and a different perception of why we're here. And the one example I can give that I know very well, I have worked with many shamans from different backgrounds, but in Australia, in most animist traditions that I have encountered, they acknowledge that anima and animus exists in biological and non-biological, or animate and inanimate objects, but they are not necessarily treated as brothers and sisters. That means you don't just go in to a forest or land and chop all those trees down and blast mountainsides to get granite out of it or gold or whatever. You do a lot of work in tuning in and asking Mother Earth, whether you can even enter there, because these spaces are called sacred spaces. And in the Western mind, land has been created by God for us to use. Nothing is sacred except me, because I'm God. And there is a big problem, because we have separated ourselves from the very external environment that gives us life in the first place. Do you see, when we want to punish someone, what do? Put them into an enclosed space, a prison. If you really want to punish them, you cut out light, you keep them just alive with a little piece of bread and water. No energy from the sun, water is just enough. And some people can survive without water for quite a while too. But you isolate them from the external environment. Now, if the person happens to be the type of individual who's on a path, that encourages them to go inside and ask questions about themselves. But for a lot of other people, it makes them feel cut off. So it puts them into disparity. What's the idea? Break them down so that we can reprogram them. Because we're punishing them, after all. No one's going to put you into maximum security or in isolation in order to say, this is a retreat for you. It's good for you. And have a spiritual master come in and consult you every day or once a week. That'll be good, because then you can transform people. But what they do is they want to punish you. They want to break your spirit, literally, by imprisoning your soul, break you from your spirit. So when you cut off, we don't have to be in maximum security. We're already cut off from the environment and nature. The only thing we know is that when we're in the city, we don't feel good. When we go into nature, we feel good. It's nicer. Well, a simple scientific explanation is, in the city is approximately 120 to 150 free ions, available ions, which is basically an energy exchange, per cubic centimeter. In nature, it's about 2,000 to 2,500. So there's at least 15 to 20 times more ions. So you're getting more energy. And the higher up you go, like in the Himalayas, mountains that have also nature, you got 5,000, 7,000, there's a lot more free ions. So, quite clearly, quite simply, nature is giving you energy. The Earth rotates at a certain speed. It has its own geomagnetic field. That gives energy to plants, which you are receiving not just the oxygen from, but the biomagnetism. And when you eat it, you also receive that internally. Otherwise, you're absorbing it directly externally. Therefore, you have a biomagnetic field as well. You are not simply a bipedal bioplasmic being. You're a constantly changing, interactive, dynamic energy matrix, which, as an energy matrix, has one prime function: an information exchange interface. Information on multiple levels. Now, when you know that, that is the what that you are, as opposed to a male, a female of a certain cultural background, somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's father, somebody's mother. They are the roles that we play in societal life. What I'm talking about is the essence that you are. So, when we're talking about health, in my understanding, because generally in this country it's the absence of illness. When you're not sick, you're healthy. More or less. It's very, very generic. And if you're feeling good and everything seems to be okay and functioning okay, then you're not complaining. So you're not going to pay any attention to your body. You're not going to listen to anything that is not asking for you to listen, i.e. any pain, any disruption in the bowels, loss of hair, skin rashes, whatever. Or even psychological and emotional issues. So nobody pays attention to themselves when everything seems to be going good. But is that health? Firstly. So we're looking at what you could say as, or call, a new idea or concept. I won't say definition, because it's not defined, because it's a state of being. It is the result of, from my perspective, the alignment of your thoughts, your emotions, your intuition and instinct, your sensations, because this is the instinct directly through the sensations, and your non-critical, non-judgmental observer, all working together as a perfect symphony, creating wonderful music, being guided by the conductor, which is up there, your transpersonal self. When that alignment is there, your hearing, your sensing, your understanding, and your capacity to respond is heightened. And they all vibrate at different frequencies. Scientifically proven today. And we will show that to you today through the devices that we have. So, that's what the Orassy is about. Multifunction center, which gives people an opportunity to come and see, understand, and experience in one place the different faculties that make up our existence. Health. For me, this is what health is about. And fundamentally, it is not something that is extraneous. It is not something that you have to change your mind about in order to get to understand it. It's not a cult. It's not something you have to change your belief system. It's actually what you are. In fact, you have changed that biologically inherited essential way of being by allowing yourself to be programmed through societal perceptions of life. Because that's natural law, and what we've done is allowed ourselves to adopt unnatural ways to fit into society. Not saying that that's bad. What I am saying is that that's not the whole picture. We're a lot more than what society would like us to be. So if we feel something is disparate, uneasy, missing, imbalanced, I suggest it is because we have steered and strayed a long way from our natural self, our essential self. Coming back to that doesn't require that you change your religion, your hairstyle, your partner, your lifestyle, or your belief system. It simply requires that you, if you wish, open a door and say, let me look a little bit closer at what I am as opposed to who I am. Because after all, the what stays with me everywhere I go. The who changes. As I said, you're someone's mother, you're someone's sister, you're someone's daughter. There's a lot of different who's, but the what does not change. And wherever you go, you carry the same what. So if we look at that, that is a constant. And what people fear most is change because they don't know constant. And when you don't know constant, you don't have a reference that you can go back to each time to build on. That is why humans take a long time to evolve. Because your reference isn't clear. Sense of stable foundation that I can bring the information that I get when I go out and I pick up and I learn and I do whatever. The whole point is that in the process of going through what you call life, because we are living what we've been programmed to do, we've ended up being separated from life itself. So there is your interactive matrix in the presence of another very big interactive matrix called life. You end up missing out on a lot of what life is about because we're living our version of it. So I'm blocking it all out, saying, no, I've got to get up now, wash my face, empty my bowels, feed myself again, have a shower, put my clothes on, and off I go to work. And when I'm at work, oh, what do I have to do? Oh, yes, of course, I have to get on with this job, or I've got to get on with that job, or I've got to get on with that job. Meantime, life's there. It never leaves you. But you left it a long time ago. And by having done that, clearly, you're going to feel something's missing. Because you're not receiving what it's there to give you constantly, without condition, without limit, and clearly without judgment. Which is why of the people that I have worked with, be they shamans or whatever, the ones that have not disconnected from nature, therefore natural law, they hear, they see, they sense a lot more differently than others. And the reason for it is the interconnectivity has not been cut. I'm not saying they've got all the answers. What I am saying is, by having observed, and when I observe them, they clearly understand and feel that there's a lot more to life than just their own version. Therefore, these people become our intermediaries. That's why a shaman, for example, is very important. Because they have kept the connection with all these other levels. They have not cut themselves off. So when things go wrong in a society, we'll say, well, let's go back to, you know who, that guy or that woman, because they've got some ability to maybe see things that we have lost. But when we're babies, we still have it. The only difference is it's not being cultivated into a higher level of organization. It's just info coming in, info going out. In chaos. That's why babies do that. It's just like info's coming in, info's going out. All they're doing is responding to life. So until you've got the reference established to say, rather than info coming in, info coming out, you go down to the reference, you go out to that objective, interact with it, and bring the info here. If you do it only here, it stays there. If you bring it down to here, you've got here and there, but unfortunately the two have a big conflict, head and heart. Masculine, feminine, which one's cleverer and smarter? Logic and reasoning always will prevail over emotions. Women are so emotional. Difficult. Difficult to handle. Why do you have to be so emotional? Why can't you see the logic and the reasoning? Limited. Until you get down to here, and notice what happens. It follows natural law again. Gravity brings you down to here. In Zen, up here is like gas, molecules of gas. And your thoughts, there are thousands of them. But you try to catch one, it's like nothing. As they get closer, natural law, in chemistry we call it bonding, brings them and they coalesce and it turns into a liquid. And emotions are very liquidy. You see, you got all these ideas, and they say, I have an idea, and then, oh, I'm feeling good about it. So see, when you're in liquid, it supports you, and it feels very, very nurturing, and you can flow, and you begin to experience the flow of life. Now, if you allow natural law to take over, it brings you further down into something solid. We call this mountain quality. And that mountain quality is down there in your center of gravity. This place here is the most important part of the human body in every culture in the world except the West. This is called Dantian in China. This is the Pranic Center in India. The ancient Greeks saw it as the omphalic center. It means literally the center of the universe, your universe, but in the West, cut you off completely. We don't want you knowing yourself, because if you know yourself, I can't control you. So we'll keep you separated from you, the real you, and I'll have you constantly ping-ponging and warring between your head and your heart. If you're emotional, good. Keep emotional. If you're mental, good. Keep mental. The fun of the mental. Fundamental. And so this is a constant battle between the two. It's not until you go down into your center here, it's also known as the center of knowingness. Here I think, here I feel, but here I know. Which is why when you have a gut feeling, it's not coming from here or here. It comes from down here, and it's strong, and it's pulling you down. It anchors, it earths, it's solid. It doesn't shift. We call it mountain quality because, like a mountain that sits there, when you encounter a mountain, you can see it's not fussed about you being there. It has what we call an isness about it. It's called presence, and hence beingness. And it then reflects to you your beingness. This is your essential nature. This is the what that you are. And once you have that, that forms the possibility and acts as your foundation. The possibility of and the true reality of your foundation. It is in the Tibetan tantric system known as your Vajra nature. Vajra in Sanskrit means indestructible. So it's the part of you that doesn't die. And it gives you foundation to give you an ability to not just found things, because if you found it as good, but it's your reference, your constant reference. So you bring everything back to Dantian, back to that sense of knowing. So, as we progress with Orassy, health is the result of these faculties being aligned. How does that translate into daily life? Now, through wisdom tradition practices, you sit and do things. We do breathing, we do meditation, sometimes visualizations, and we go through specific rituals, not ceremonies. Ceremonies are good, but rituals transform. Ceremonies don't. We are celebrating with ceremonies. With a ritual, our focus is to transform where you were to where you need to be. With a ceremony, we go through a process that is more traditional and cultural, and it's a way of giving thanks or celebrating something, which is nice. Now, fundamentally, women have the most powerful ritual that happens, because when you're born, you go through the natural processes as males do, but then you hit a certain period in your life where your capacity to create and recreate, known as procreate, kicks in. And suddenly the change has happened. You are no longer a child. You're becoming a woman. You are becoming a creative being. And men, subconsciously and quite often consciously, are very frightened and challenged by that. And this is the yin principle. is the capacity from existence to manifest out of nothing life. So there is a foundation knowingness they have that men don't, which is why they're more up here. Now you can have, of course, emotional men. That's fine. But the emotion without grounding, you've got nothing to actually relate it to that is tangible in the daily life. So it stays in the realm of ideas. And that unfortunately creates more imbalance than it does balance. So the concept of my tangible, accessible program was, how do we help people to mobilize from a state of essentially not knowing their essential nature and what you could call, therefore, confusion from their spiritual perspective, into getting to know the what that they are, so that they experience on a cellular level the purpose and meaning of their existence and what their path is, without necessarily having to take them through the wisdom tradition training, which traditionally starts 10 years in the beginning of learning, 10 years to break down the patterns and assimilate, and then 10 years to reintegrate. So you, at the age of 40, are beginning to be a teacher. Here, we go and do a weekend workshop, and then I go out and teach. I've got my diploma, and I'm a Reiki master, or I'm a Reiki practitioner. And then after 3 of those weekends, over a period of maybe 2 or 3 months, I can be a master. Because everything is approached from up here. Maybe emotion is involved, maybe intuition, but it's not integrated. So it is in the beingness that you become, at first, a teacher. The mastery is that you have learned to live together with life. And you understand your microcosm, this mesocosm, which means the in-between, and the macrocosm. What's it all about? There's no more separation. And that's what mastery is about. It's not mastering a technique and a skill. That is simply information turning into knowledge through techniques and skills that assist you. But it is not knowing. It's very different. And you don't get knowing through weekend courses or going to university and getting degrees. You have to transform everything that's been imprinted from the beginning. Literally, it's a perestroika. It's a breakdown in order to rebuild. And all of the programs and all of the attachments and all of the fears and all of the insecurities have to be addressed, because every one of them is a block to your capacity to achieve this level of ultimate coherence. And fundamentally, the objective is a peak state, not just a small little glimmer every now and again of consciousness, a peak state of consciousness where you are aware and awake 360 degrees 24/7 for the rest of this life and beyond. Every single person in this room has that capacity. But to get there, who taught you? Do you have the skills? Do you have the path? Do you know how? We don't learn this at school. Our parents didn't know, so how are we going to get there? And it's very hard. Any great master will tell you exactly what I have told you, only after they see you're ready to hear it, and only after you've done a lot of work in preparation. Because that's the traditional way. And we're living in times now where, because everything's broken down on many, many levels, we don't have the time. People aren't patient. And who's going to invest 30 years to get to a point where they think, well, in the past, in order to learn something, you have to take your body to a part of the world. Search out and seek the master. Put energy, effort, and time with passion. Not just come in and go on the internet and getting information and I know everything. Because you didn't earn it. Therefore, it stays just where you've put it, in your head. And you could be intuitive and it goes in the heart, and that's good. But then it's not an integral part of your new being. And that, for me, is what ultimate health is. Ultimate health is a state of the transformed you, not just the same you that's not niggling you and bugging you with the skin rash and the piles and the bad digestion and the headache and the migraine and the bad back. Does that make any sense? This is all the temporary. It's the same you. And whenever you have what is called a symptom or an ailment, it's just the you saying to you, you're not paying attention. And all we're doing is just smoothing over the situation. And where I'm coming from with what I call ultimate health is a state of coherence. Higher level of coherence. So, the concept of the ultimate health, how do we achieve that? Well, we don't want to lecture to people. At the same time, we don't want to just say, okay, we've got everything worked out for you. All you've got to do is these yoga classes, these meditations, these breathing techniques, take these supplements, do these exercises, and if you've got any problems, we'll address them initially, because we've got a wonderful chiropractor, we've got a wonderful doctor, we're going to look at your blood, we're going to give you exercises with our wonderful yoga teacher. One size doesn't fit all, because everyone is unique, unfortunately, for the medical system. Tibetan medicine starts with the concept of 88,000 diseases, and there are 88,000 medicines for each one. Because the disease is not symptomatic and physiological. It is a complex of the combinations and permutations between your thoughts, your emotions, your sensations, and all the other parts. So they'll say, you have this symptom, but we're going to trace it back through a tree. It's a fantastic tree with branches. And they trace and they go, okay, we've worked on all this. They do your pulse analysis, they look, they ask questions, and they intuit. And it takes them 7 years to become a doctor, and in the learning, they don't learn it mentally by rote, they do mantras.